Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Trudy Jacobson. Thank you very much for coming to this session. I hope you're enjoying the CIT conference. This is Scaffolding Student Learning, the role of Metaliteracy and Open Pedagogy. Um, I am a distinguished librarian and the head of the Information Literacy Department at the University at Albany. What I thought I would do is sort of go through my slides first, and then because I can't see the platform as I'm presenting my slides, I will then go back into the platform and I will be able to see questions or hear you and respond to your questions once we go through the slides. And please, I do encourage questions. After we've finished the slides, you can either do them live through the Q&A or in the discussion forum. So this is what we'll be exploring during this session, engaging students in their own learning through open pedagogy and the value of scaffolding to open pedagogy. We'll be looking at some key aspects of metaliteracy, which helps students to adapt to some of the elements of open pedagogy. And so let's start with open pedagogy. So this moves beyond a content-centered approach, and you probably are familiar with this already, but just in case, I thought I'd include a few points. It shifts the focus from resources, so textbooks, readings, that type of thing, to practice. And often, not always, but most of the time in conjunction with open educational resources. And teachers have a different role in open pedagogy where they become learners along with the students. So this is a definition of open education practices from EDUCAUSE, and often open education practices and open pedagogy are used almost synonymously, although open education practices includes other kinds of things. But I really like this definition. It's a framework for revising the practice of teaching to engage students in actively shaping their learning and contributing to public knowledge. So how do we incorporate open pedagogy? And what I'd actually like to ask is, how do you engage students in actively shaping their learning? So I've set up a Padlet. The URL is here on the screen. You may also be seeing it in the discussion forum. And there is also a QR code, obviously, here. And I'm just going to pause for a minute or two and give you a chance to go to that Padlet and put your ideas or so your practices. How are you engaging students in actively shaping their learning, and perhaps also in sharing their knowledge more widely? So I'm just going to pause for a minute. I have Padlet open on another screen, and I'm hoping to see some responses come through. I'm also hoping that this might be a good resource for you if we get a number of responses, so that you can see what others are doing as well. And if you haven't used Padlet before, you can just click on the plus sign in the bottom right, or just double click on the wall and you can start typing. And I'm seeing some things come up. So thank you. So students choose which project format they want to do for the semester project. That would definitely engage students. And perhaps some might pick things that are new to them, and they might grow learning how to do that new format. Great. Student assisting with research and writing book chapters. That's fabulous. Yeah, choice is important. So if you get a chance to keep doing that, I appreciate the ones that are there. And if you have others, please add them. But in the meantime, I will continue on. So I came up with some ideas. I've used a number of these, and I divided them between actively shaping learning and then also contributing to public knowledge. So syllabus creation is one you often hear about with open pedagogy, but then perhaps they're going to make this syllabus available openly, and other courses, other classes, other institutions might find it useful and work from it. Joint creation of a course textbook. And I'm just looking back because there was the point on the Padlet about the students writing. So the course textbook might be used just within the course, maybe semester after semester, but it could also be made available to others. Creation of zines or infographics based on student interest. This was very much like the point that was added to the Padlet about letting students pick the format they're interested in and then making them openly available. And students assessing Wikipedia articles that they've selected, something that interests them, or students editing Wikipedia articles, sort of this ultimate open resource. So scaffolding. So these are activities of different levels that help students to move towards more sophistication in their work. And the scaffolding can be removed as they show evidence of independent performance. Very often with open pedagogy, because students are being asked to do things that are unfamiliar to them, where they have a different relationship with the work and with the audience that may be seeing it, they may feel some uncertainty. I think as more and more instructors are using open pedagogy, though, this is something that may change. Scaffolding can take a variety of different formats, and I'm going to be talking about sort of developing a metaliteracy mindset to help learners sort of engage with these new roles that they're taking on. So the metaliteracy framework is a pedagogical model that focuses on an individual's method of learning and participating in today's information environment. It initially grew out of information literacy, but has really evolved from that. So now it's much more sort of overarching, but it does look at Web 2.0 and social media because learners are able to create so much more than years ago they were able to do. And frequently they're collaborating with others in doing it. So I contend that metaliterate traits provide this scaffolding, the habits of mind that are needed for open pedagogical learning situations. And using evidence-based practice, I have been doing this in a number of my courses. Students are introduced to the metaliteracy framework, which you can see here. At the center is the metaliterate learner. And it's going a little bit beyond where I want to go. Let me see. There we go. So the first ring out are learning domains, and we'll come back to those in a minute. The second ring out are metaliterate learner characteristics, which I'm going to ignore today. And then the outer ring are the roles that students take on. So going to the learning domains, there are four fairly common domains, but generally students are more familiar with the cognitive, what they need to know, and the behavioral, what they should be able to do after they've learned something. And I have found that introducing students to the affective domain and the metacognitive domain really and students have written reflections about how they've never really thought about how they feel and the difference that can make when they're learning. So this reflection on the other domains can be very helpful and can help them work through some of the nervousness or anxiety they feel with some open pedagogical activities. And then there are the 9 meta-literate learner roles. Just 4 of them are going to be called out here. But introducing students to these, and there's sets of questions, and you're seeing a little bit from these questions for each role, has really had quite an impact on my students. I collaborate with a political science professor, and these questions actually came from the work she does with her students. She said that the students weren't really understanding the roles, and would it be possible to explain them further? And the Metaliteracy Learning Collaborative actually developed questions sort of about this. And when they start thinking about this, so for communicator, do you see your role as someone who communicates consciously and conscientiously in a variety of forums? When they start really engaging with this, they see themselves differently. And I have a few student quotes that are going to sort of point this up. So some examples beyond the one that the political science professor does, where she actually has her students sort of inhabit a role that they feel uncomfortable with over part of the semester to really try to focus on sort of becoming more adept at it. But these are some that I have done. So in a course that I teach that tends to get seniors, we participate in the Wiki Education program, and the students get a mix of meta-literacy, information literacy, and put it into practice editing in Wikipedia. So this phonological rule article, a good deal of what was written here was written by one of my students. So they really do contribute a good deal to articles in Wikipedia based on their expertise in their major, and they get to choose the article they pick. This is from the dashboard that we use in the course. This was last fall, but here I've got highlighted in green or marred off in green that phonological rule, a philosophy topic. So this student added almost 2,000 words to the article. He added 16 references to it. And at the point I took this screenshot, there were over 6,000 views of the article since he started working on it. So this really shows the impact. The one down a couple further, Alfred Cantor, the student who picked that, this was a Holocaust survivor, and she was rather miffed that there was no article. I think there was something extraordinarily basic with a sentence or so in it. And so she decided to develop that article. So they really were engaged. They selected their own topics, and they felt that they were taking on roles that were very unusual to them. So Alex, who was in that section of the course last fall, wrote this in one of his reflection papers. This spring, I had some absolutely phenomenal students, and they wrote a number of very good reflections. So this is the blog from the Wiki EDU program, and this post was written by one of my students, Corinne Baker. And when I read it as a really good, and she expanded it, but I thought that for the blog post, but I thought that this quote really sort of sums up what we all hope will happen with students and their learning with open pedagogy. So she really thought about the role, she thought about her audience, and she was a senior. And so I was really excited that she thought that this was the most critically engaged she'd been with the research process. And another quote from Alex. So talking about Wikipedia work, the open pedagogy and the producing information for others within the meta-literacy framework. And he's talking here about the different roles that one plays. And I'm really amazed because this course that I teach is only 7 weeks long. It's asynchronous online. And the students really seem to uh, grasp these roles and sort of make it part of themselves in a way um, that was not happening with other content when I taught it non-open pedagogically. And this here, let me just check. Okay, is a site that my first year experience students last fall created. Um, I can put the link to it in the chat later, and I'm not going to go out to it because I'd like to leave a lot of time for conversation and questions. But these students developed in small groups. So this was during COVID. The students were not having the semester they experienced as first semester students. It was a synchronous, primarily synchronous online course. But as everybody who taught last fall, and it was just a very difficult time. And so I wanted to have the students sort of community build. I want there to be support. And so they created items, an FAQ, zines, podcasts and videos, infographics, to tell other first year students sort of what the experience of being a first year student is like. And I was so incredibly proud of them. This picture is one of 6 or 7 that Rose, she went around campus. She was one of the students who actually was on campus taking pictures that we could put in here. And I think they did a great job. One of the students who was involved with the FAQ added a section where students could ask questions, and he set up a Gmail account that he's monitoring in case any questions come in, even though the course is over. So we have lots of meta-literacy resources that are available of all sorts. There are short videos on YouTube. There are those questions for the roles, just a wide variety of things. We have several MOOCs. We have content that was originally in a badging system with lots of activities that go along with the goals and learning objectives. So there's all sorts of open resources that are available at metaliteracy.org. So I think this is my last slide, or just about. So if you are thinking about using meta-literacy with open learning, open pedagogy, just thinking about what meta-literacy content might meet yours and your students' needs or provide inspiration. Certainly anyone could create their own, but we have a lot available as a jumping off point if you're interested. There are the meta-literacy goals and learning objectives, and those could be aligned with your course goals. From the success I've seen and others have seen with encouraging learners to envision themselves in the roles, I think that's a really powerful aspect of this, and to think about where their strengths are and where they may want to continue growing. And then the metacognitive reflection activities. Many courses include these, but I've found them to be powerful both for the students and for me. So I've been adding them even where they weren't. I'll conclude with this. I'll get back into the platform so I can see things, but I just want to mention that Tom Mackey and I have a book coming out probably at the end of this year, Metaliteracy in a Connected World, Developing Learners as Producers. And a couple of the chapters that I wrote for it have to do with open pedagogy, in case you're interested. Okay. Um, so at this point, I have if there are any questions, please feel free to click on the live Q&A, and I believe that that will enable you to speak or to add questions to the discussion forum. Thank you. And it's possible you may want to also chat with other attendees about what you're doing or something that you saw on the Padlet. Okay, so there's a question in the live Q&A. Let me get that up. And it's just slowly opening. Okay, so all right, I see some questions. Can you expand on how students select which role they explore and take on for the course? So that's Sally Friedman's political science course, and I think she just lets them choose which one they can do. In her course, there's a lot of discussion, and so the roles of communicator, participant are important ones, but they also create what we call quests based on what's in that badging content. So the students work through a number of those, but then they create one and share it with the others in the class. So they're taking on publisher, producer. And so she encourages them to pick one that they feel less comfortable with. And at times during the course, she'll ask them about their progress on it. So Ashley, if that did not answer your question, please let me know. So Robin's asking about students giving pushback about publishing their work outside the classroom. I know that that does happen. I have never had it happen. The Wikipedia, well, for the class where I use Wikipedia, I have never had it happen. The students there take on like a username for Wikipedia, so they are not sort of identified by name with it. And I think that although they take a lot of responsibility for what they're doing, I think not having their full name associated with it helps in that case. In the first year experience class, some students opted out of working on the website content, but I don't know if it was because of it being published beyond the class or if it was because these were students who also didn't participate in a lot of other ways. Okay, so the question is, have I had many faculty who are skeptical of students editing and writing in Wikipedia? I think when I talk to my students about it, many say that they're told not to and have been told not to forever. But others say that they're finding more flexibility on the part of their faculty members. And also that now that they have much more knowledge about the way Wikipedia works and a lot of the things happening on the back end, I do ask them if they would ever talk to a faculty member and sort of confront some of their views about it. And they say that they've learned enough to do that, that there still are issues with Wikipedia, but they know better how to evaluate the content. Have I missed any questions that are in the live Q&A? I should say that the students who are doing the Wikipedia work, I mentioned that they're mostly seniors. Um, I have, let's see, just, I just saw a new symbol and I was trying to figure out what it was. I have a lot of philosophy students in the course because they are required to take it to fulfill their upper level information literacy requirement in the major. And I have found that many of these students are extraordinarily well written um, and excellent thinkers. So although I get students from all different disciplines, it's been exciting to work with particularly the philosophy students. But Corinne, who wrote that blog post for WikiEDU, is an English major. So there's really a variety of different students. I'm really excited that from this past semester, she wrote the blog post. Another student, along with a first year student, joined me in a presentation that I gave. And another one and I are writing a scholarly article together, somebody who will be a senior from the Wikipedia course. So I never had the kind of engagement in the past when I wasn't, even though I was using a lot of active learning types of things, this seems to just lift everything to a very different level. For me, having the scaffolding of the WikiEDU program is very helpful, but even though it can be a little nerve-wracking at times, I think that it really works very well. It's just a matter of bringing the students on board. And McRobin's question, I haven't really had a big problem with that. So I know we've got about 2 minutes left. Just checking the live Q&A. So Amber's asking about whether there's many faculty members having their students participate in this Wiki education program. I know of one other on the University at Albany campus, and that is somebody who teaches music, and it's a very large class. Mine is usually about 20 students. But if you go to that wikiedu.org and then the news tab where the blog is, you can see all different kinds of applications of it in schools around the US and Canada. As far as I know, it's still limited to those two countries. People at other institutions about it. And they're using it sort of in different ways with different levels of students. So I understand we've got about 50 seconds left. I encourage you to email me if you like, tjacobson@albany.edu. I'd be happy to converse with you that way. And thank you very much for coming to this session, and enjoy the rest of the conference. And if there's any last question in the last 26 seconds, I am happy to take it. Okay. All right. Have a great day, everybody.